All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for taking time out of what I'm sure was a busy, hectic, wonderful day to come over here and give us share your thoughts with us. This is our third and final listening meeting of our combined subcommittees here. We are Retention and Recruitment, and we are the Education, Recruitment, and Retention Task Force. Members here have been through two of these listening sessions. This is a great way to bookend it. We had a great turnout in Greenville. We had a great discussion at Francis Marion, and we have a great turnout here again today. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we are beginning to start to compile some of our recommendations. March 31st, we're going to meet again to compile more based on what we hear here today. And I can assure you that we are definitely taking this input to heart when we're putting these recommendations together. Our goal, like your goal, is to make teaching in South Carolina not such a horrible thing. The Chair Lady Allison, I'll have the members introduce themselves in a minute. By the way, I'm State Representative Tim McGinnis. I serve on the Education Public Works Committee. But Chair Lady Allison, the former Chair Lady of the Education Public Works Department, said something great at the end of the Greenville meeting, which is, don't bash the profession. We're going to fix this. We want people who are interested in teaching to remain interested in teaching, and we're going to help develop the tools to make teaching in South Carolina a great experience and learning in South Carolina a great experience. We look forward to hearing from you, but first I want you to know who you're talking to, because we're not all evil politicians. Just me, I think, up here right now, and of course, former Chair Lady, she's evil emeritus. But why don't we start down here on my left, and we'll work our way over introducing ourselves.
There he is. I'm Tim Rhodes. I am currently the chairperson for the Abbeville County School District, and I'm Regional 11 representative for the South Carolina School Board Association as well. So I'm representing them on the task force as well. So that is me.
Good afternoon. I am Mark Butler. I am the Dean of the College of Education at Anderson University. I'm representing higher education and teacher preparation on this task force.
I'm Rita Allison, former
Good afternoon, Patrick Kelly. I teach APUS Government at Blythewood High in Richland 2, and I'm also Director of Governmental Affairs for Palmetto State Teachers Association.
Hi, I'm Julia Sowell. I'm a senior secondary education major at Clemson University, and I'm representing teaching fellows on the task force.
Good afternoon, and last and least, I'm Frank Rainwater, and I'm the Executive Director of South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office.
All right, and I believe Lila has our list of speakers today. You have 3 minutes to speak, and I'm going to go ahead and let Lila handle this. And how will they know the 3 minutes? Do we need to?
I will tell them time.
Okay.
I'll like 10 seconds, and then I'll tell you time.
And we have security in here. If you go over your time, we'll make you stay in this building like we have to sometimes. Just kidding.
I would encourage y'all, there are only currently 10 speakers on the list. If you didn't get a chance to sign in and you're feeling inspired, just sign in over there, and I'll check that. Our first two speakers, so that they know the order. First up is Ms. Michelle Jordan, and then Dr. Rebecca McKenzie Appling.
Hello and good afternoon. I timed it as 3.5 minutes, but we'll see how far we get. I'm Michelle Jordan, as she said, and I'm a school-based speech-language pathologist, also known as a SLP. As you probably know, an SLP is a professional with a master's degree or higher who evaluates, diagnoses, treats speech, language, communication, and swallowing disorders in adults and children. We are required to hold national certification, state licensure, and in the schools, teacher certification through the Department of Education. Because of this teacher certification requirement, SLPs often get grouped in with and sometimes lost among classroom educators. And while we deeply respect and appreciate our teacher colleagues and the crucial jobs they do, SLPs are members of a distinct and separate discipline, similar to school psychologists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists. It is in this light that I'd like to share with you some background information about school-based SLPs, including our roles, impact, and challenges so that we can be part of the discussions. So there are approximately 1,200 SLPs across the state. At the beginning of each school year, we have approximately 180 SLP vacancies on average. These vacancies must be filled because speech services are required by law. Speech services can only be provided by someone who is appropriately licensed as an SLP, and no other employee can substitute for an SLP. When districts are not able to hire us directly, they must find SLPs through contract agencies, which can cost districts upwards of $35,000 to $40,000 per year per position. And so when we're looking for SLPs, schools are not just competing against other school districts, we're competing with other settings because we can work in schools, hospitals, private clinics, telehealth, and as college instructors. So that's part of the reason why SLP applicants are so hard to find. But why are we needed in the schools anyway? Students with speech-language impairment make up the second largest number of students with a disability if they have speech only. But when they provide services to students with other disabilities, we are by far the largest category of disability in the schools. But in addition to providing needed services, SLPs also generate revenue. We are a source of actual income for districts by billing Medicaid for therapy services for eligible students. Each calendar year across the state, approximately $25 million to $28 million is generated from Medicaid billing in the schools. Speech therapy services generate approximately 52% of that billing, which results in about $13 million to $14.5 million each year. In comparison to other related services who also bill Medicaid, the SLP salaries is substantially less than our OT and PT counterparts, on the average $30,000 to $45,000 a year less. So that's a brief overview, I think I have time, of SLPs in the schools, some of our challenges, our roles, and our impact. And I just want to make sure that we are part of the conversation, so thank you for listening.
10 seconds remaining.
Did it. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? You first. No, you first. No, I defer.
Ladies first.
My nails are getting in the way of this.
I understand.
May I ask you on, when we talk about salaries, your salaries, are those salaries for you determined by your district?
It is my understanding, yes, and every district, except for one that I know of, we are on the teacher pay scale. OTs and PTs sometimes have their own pay scale. In my current district, they are on a teacher pay scale, but they automatically start at the doctorate level. They don't have doctorates, but they automatically start at that level. We are Masters plus 30, most of us, and when we come out of USC graduate school, but we start there, and we don't have any bonus. Psychologists often have their own separate pay scale as well, so we are always on the teacher pay scale regardless, even though we are more like psychologists and certainly OTs and PTs.
Would you say that salary for you and counterparts are the most deterrent to having filled those 180 vacancies?
I would say a lot of it, and because we, like I said, we are competing with other settings, they do pay more. Sometimes maybe not, the hourly rate may not be better, but when they get to work longer, they do get to pay more, and it's very different. The paperwork in the schools is challenging. The extra duties is challenging. Not that we don't want to be team players, but I know at a school right now, SLPs do 3 duties a day. Morning duty, once a week in the month, every day, afternoon duty, and then every day lunch duty. And the lunch duty is to provide the unencumbered time for their teacher counterparts. And what's happening there is that they're actually taking 2.5 hours of their work week to do that coverage because they can't eat their own lunch during that time. So they're providing coverage for their counterparts, but they're 2.5 hours worth of their work week, they have to do the same amount of work. And I don't think that's an appropriate way to cover unencumbered time for teachers. Do they need it? For sure. That's not the best way to provide it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was too slow on the button. So, kind of building on Chair Lady Allison's question about salary.
Yes.
Obviously, all education sectors are competing against the private sector right now, but you guys are unique because you like literally translate directly into the private field with speech language pathology in a hospital or a clinical setting.
Yes.
Ballpark. What is the pay gap between if I go and work in a non-school-based speech language pathology setting, average? And I know that's almost
Right.
impossible because you got private practice, you got hospitals, but
Correct.
what are
I
we
wish I
looking
had
at?
that data offhand. I don't, but if it's okay, I'll be glad to find the answer to that question. And Lila, if you don't mind, I could share it with Lila and she could share it with you. I don't want to give wrong data.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and I'm going to try and talk fast. I'm an SLP. I am going to elaborate on a specific area to which I think our skills are very important in the school setting. I come from 30-plus years' experience. I've been a school-based SLP. I've been a building-level administrator, and I've also coordinated district speech-language services. So I come with a wide breadth and vantage point as an SLP. I want to talk about literacy, which we know is a critically important area of focus. As research has told us, the building blocks of literacy have their origins in oral language development. There are 5 components that are very important in that. Phonology, the sounds of our language; semantics, vocabulary; syntax, how we speak in sentences; morphology, how words have parts added and subtracted from it that affect meaning; and pragmatics, how we infer the nuances of language. How well children acquire those skills determine how well they understand and use spoken language. But it also determines how well they learn to decode words and read with fluency and understand what they've read. In addition, it's how well they encode, how they spell words, and how they convey their thoughts in written form. I appreciate and recognize that the proposed education budget includes priorities for early literacy instruction and training for teachers. But perhaps what you do not recognize is that you already have in every school building across the state speech and language professionals whose training and expertise are in these very areas of language. These identified areas that are crucial to highly effective literacy instruction. These components form the basis of what is termed as the speech-to-print perspective. Speech-language pathologists want to be collaborative partners with classroom teachers, reading interventionists, literacy coaches, and administrators. We also recognize that the skills and training of speech-language pathologists in the school setting are often underutilized and often not fully recognized as to the impact they could have in a consultative model. That means we want to come alongside of our teacher colleagues. We want to strive to help them as we all work to create literacy instruction that is effective. So how do we do this? First, as my colleague said, we have to fill the shortages that exist currently. Our number one priority are to the children with speech language needs, and also we want to increase the number of SLPs in the public school setting so we have dedicated time to actually work collaboratively more effectively with our teachers.
Okay. So if we are down 180 speech language pathologists already, and we want to add more, what needs to happen for us to bridge that gap?
So I think a lot goes to what Ms. Jordan said in terms of how we look at the workload, caseload of SLPs currently in the schools. It looks to how salaries are addressed so that we can be competitive with the other areas in which we are competing. And it also looks towards I think a recognition of all the skills that we could bring to the table in terms of that consultative model, which right now is underutilized. As we know, our first priority is to IDEA, serving our children, but because literacy is very important and because literacy is built on language, we could work more effectively with our teacher colleagues if there were more of us to have dedicated time in which to do that.
My question, Dr. McKinney, do you know what the difference is in the salaries between you as a SLP in the school system as opposed to outside of the school system? Do you know the?
I do have that answer.
Okay, there is an answer there.
I had a colleague apparently watching. She texted that information
Very
to me.
good.
So SLPs in the upstate medical settings make 60 to 80,000 annually starting, and the average in a skilled nursing facility is 72,000, and those are starting salaries.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is, in your delivery, you talked about working alongside your teachers and you could be a team. Is the reason that is not happening because of the numbers of the less numbers of SLPs in schools, or is there a mechanism by how we can get those together?
So I think that is twofold. I think there is a shortage, so our caseloads become larger because we are required by law to meet the needs of identified children with speech language impairments. So I think that's a huge factor. I think because our workloads and, as Ms. Jordan alluded to, some of the duties to which that we participate in, and although we want, as she said, to be a team player, sometimes that takes us out of the times that we could collaborate in grade level meetings. We are often seeing students when they have the opportunity to come together. So it's trying to look at an increase of number to address the large needs of children that are coming to us, and we are seeing children who have increased needs. We have children who work on augmentative communication devices, which takes extra time to set those up and work with those. We see children now who are medically fragile, so we are addressing swallowing, feeding needs. We have increases in the children. There's data to show us that in the next several years, because of COVID, we've learned a lot of effects from that. That children between 0 and 3 have lost average points in their verbal and nonverbal functioning. So we are very concerned about not only who we're addressing now, but the children that will be coming, because they are at greater risk of having language disabilities and therefore needing our services, but also because literacy is built from oral language, that we are concerned about the increased situations or challenges that's going to result in.
Thank
And my question was, we're 180 short statewide. How many total are there in the state?
1,200.
Okay, I think you had said that. I just wanted to double check that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Our next two speakers up, Marcia Baxter and Seth Stewart.
Good afternoon. Teaching is my profession. It's my calling, and I firmly believe it's the calling of most of the people in the buildings. In fact, when my own child was in the 8th grade, it was shadowing time at the middle school, and I tried to get her to go shadow a pharmacist or some other profession, and she looked at me and said, "Daddy's a teacher. You are a teacher. I'm called to be a teacher." She was a teacher cadet. She was a teacher fellow at USC. She has her master's, but after 14 years, I heard her say the other day, "I'm thinking about finding another profession." And my heart broke. What do I think teachers want? Number one, I think they want respect. Respect from the students, respect from the parents, and respect from the community as a whole. This includes, but is not limited to pay. Pay is secondary. Respect is number one. They also want agency. They want the capacity to act purposefully and constructively to direct their own professional growth and to contribute to the growth of their colleagues. And they want autonomy. They want that professional independence in their schools, especially to the degree in which they can make their own decisions about what they teach and how they teach it. And they want your trust. Their administrators there to supervise, and their administrators there to support, so trust them to do their jobs. And they want your support. They want praise, they want reward, but we want to focus on the positive, and I appreciate you saying, don't bash our schools. I am sick of hearing about schools being bashed. This is the profession upon which all others are built. So don't air your dirty laundry in public. Build us up. Educational policies are not created by teachers, but for teachers, they limit their professionalism, they limit their authority, they limit their creativity, and they limit their effectiveness. I'll leave you with this quote. Schools cannot become the best places for students to learn and grow unless we make them the best places for teachers to work and grow. Thank you. And this is year 50.
You have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And congratulations on it.
Well, actually, it's year 49. I'm going to do 50 next year.
Yeah, you can round that up. I learned that in
Thank
math
you.
class.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question, so family of educators, I grew up in a family of educators. In your perception, what has changed that would allow, you've been able to get to year 50, but your daughter, who also felt called, is thinking about leaving before year 15. What's changed in the interim that is potentially going to prevent her from getting to where you are?
I think the biggest issue is respect, and it's respect from everybody. Parents, when I went to school, Rita, when you went to school, it didn't matter what we said, the teacher was right. The teacher is no longer right. Teachers are questioned about everything. Why did you do this? Why did you say that? I've been a teacher. I've been an assistant principal. I've been a literacy coach. I've been to DJJ. I've been to Newberry College. I've done a little bit of everything. I even did 2 years at the R.L. Bryan bookstore for teachers. That was a good time. But anyway, I've done everything you can do in this profession. And I really think it all boils down to the respect that teachers don't get. They get criticized for everything. They get told what to teach, when to teach it, what time to teach it, and be sure you document that you taught it. I think that's where we're losing them. Because when I first started teaching, I was told at USC in the early 70s that if I went into a school building and I was told to cover the curriculum, to put all of my books in the seat, have my children sit on the textbooks, and then I could say to my principal, we covered the books. And then teach what you know what those children need. Teachers know what to teach. If we do the job in those schools, getting them ready, because I was at Newberry College, if we get them ready, you don't have to tell them what to teach. They know what to teach. We've got to do a good job pre-service too, though. There's got to be some accountability on the pre-service end. We can't send them in not prepared. I can do this if you want to I'll do this. I could preach it. I believe it. But I don't want my child to leave it. And that's why I'm here. I don't want anybody to leave. All this other stuff that just keeps coming down. The parental leave, I know that that's in the legislature right now. She had a baby, she had a hard pregnancy, she has had cancer between one baby and another, so she had no sick days. She did not get the leave. She went back to school after having a section with 8 weeks. her baby got sick, she's not going to get credit for this school year because she missed too many days. That's not right.
One more question for you. You mentioned pre-service and how we're training teachers, and I'm come from, I guess, higher ed's kind of where my headspace is at right now. What are the colleges not doing now to prepare teachers adequately, do you think?
One of the things that if we're going to take away those Read to Succeed courses, we've got to make sure that the teachers get those Read to Succeed courses, because just like my SLP people said, that early literacy is so important. We've got to make sure that in our pre-services that those teachers get the same thing in those Read to Succeed courses, no matter whether they're at Anderson, USC, Clemson, and I have a master's from Clemson, even though I have on Gamecock colors, and I am a Gamecock. We've got to make sure that no matter what school you go to, that you're getting that. So I think there needs to be an oversight committee to make sure that the universities are on the same page with the quality, not just the courses, because I'm going to tell you something else, and this is just my opinion. Taking a course online for $85 is not the same thing as getting a college graduate course or an undergraduate course in those Read to Succeed courses, because you're online. Anybody can do your work for you, rather than being person to person.
Thank you for your input. More importantly, thank you for your years of service.
Thank you. I'm not going home
I
yet
have
either.
one. I'm sorry.
The other Tim has.
Yeah, the Tim number 2, I guess. Do you think I've got a son that's a second-year teacher now, and his fiance is fixing to be a first-year teacher. Do you think more time as a student teacher would help prepare those children, I hate to say children, those
They are
students
children.
in college,
In
because would help them have a better understanding and grasp of what they're going to come into when they actually graduate and get into the classroom?
My semester at Carolina was a whole semester of student teaching. And I also went in the fall rather than the spring, and so I saw the whole classroom. I really think having those kids in August all the way through the first semester is so much better. And then having a good mentor, having a good, solid mentor in every building to help them and to explain that mentor relationship.
Thank you. Well, I think we need to hire her to be the face and spokesperson.
I got your email down for that commercial.
Good job.
I'm your friend on Facebook, Rita. And I'm also Molly's, Bill Spearman is my cousin, so I followed you and Molly. Yeah. I grew up in Saluda. I graduated from Saluda High School, and I know that they did not beat Abbeville this year, but they did one year. Just have to put that out there.
Sorry.
Thank you all very much. My name is Seth Stewart. I'm actually from Greenville, and I attended the meeting up in Greenville as well. My wife, who is also a teacher, spoke there, but we're on spring break this week, and I decided to drive my great-grandmother's 62 Falcon down from Greenville today, all 2.5 hours coming down back roads to get here and talk today. But I wanted to speak to the lower part of the state where I grew up. I grew up down in Somerton in Clarendon County, and began my teaching career. My wife and I met teaching in Colleton County, and then moved up to Clarendon County, back to Somerton, and taught in Clarendon District 1 for several years before moving to Greenville. We moved to Greenville so I could get my administrator's degree, and I'm an administrator now. I'm an assistant principal up there in Greenville. And the thing I wanted to bring up that has been, I guess, on my heart since I taught in the lower part of the state is retaining teachers and keeping teachers in that part of the state. And it's an extremely hard thing to do. Not everybody wants to teach or work or live in a town of 1,000 people where you're surrounded by 10 or 15 miles of woods. I loved it. My wife is from Cleveland, Ohio, and I got her to live there for a few years. But once we got to Greenville, we noticed how much further, I guess, the Greenville school systems, how many more opportunities they had than what some of the districts in Clarendon and Williamsburg and some of those counties have. Greenville County We have the Roper Mountain Science Center, which my kids benefit from this. They go to, they go to the regular field trips there, and it's right there for them. When we were in Clarendon County, we take a field trip to Charleston. It was great, but you have to get the buses, you have to get fuel, you have to get bus drivers, you have to go through so many more steps, and also the pay, which I know a lot of folks are talking about salary. Clarendon County, if you go and look at their teacher schedule versus Greenville County now, they have closed the gap. But when I graduated Clemson in 2013, I was offered an assistant principal job in Clarendon 2, it was Clarendon 2 at the time. I made more as a PE teacher in Greenville County than I would have made as an assistant principal in Clarendon County. Now, like I said, I know that those gaps are closing some, but I do feel like that if you're going to be a teacher in Greenville County or Clarendon County, then at least we need to be able to make the same amount of money to keep those teachers there, because those students in Clarendon County are just as important as the students in Greenville County or Horry County or anywhere else that has huge amounts of infrastructure. Richland too today, with the big announcement of Scout Broncos or Scout vehicles coming in, that's going to be a big boon for Richland too, and it's going to create so many more, and that's a great thing. It's going to create so many more opportunities for Richland, but it's still going to leave, Clarendon County and Williamsburg, places like that will not have those same opportunities that something like that will create, like Volvo, BMW, all those things. But anyway, thank you very much. Oh, questions? I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
No, I'm just asking.
Oh,
sorry.
Thank you, Seth. Our next two speakers are Lisa Ellis and Steve Newsom.
Good afternoon. I really had no intention of speaking today. I was coming to hear what other teachers had to say, because I feel like for the last 9 months, people had heard enough of me on the campaign trail. But there weren't a lot of speakers who signed up to speak, so here I am. And I don't really know the purpose of this. I am defeated. I am tired. I just spent the weekend on a student council conference with the most amazing 450 students in our state. And all I could think of was how much we are screwing them over. Since All Out May 1 in 2019, SC4Ed got a lot of flack for asking teachers to stand up for themselves for one day. Take one day off. Since then, 21,121 teachers have left the classroom permanently. I work in one of the best schools in the state, Blythewood High School. I have amazing school administration that protects us from the shenanigans that are brought down by the state, by school districts, and by the community. We are losing, when Blythewood loses teachers, and Patrick knows this, they are leaving the profession completely. If they can't make it at Blythewood, they're done. The last couple of years, we have lost more teachers leaving because everybody else recognizes the skill set that teachers have, and they're willing to snatch them up because we make really great employees. I'm not here to say anything you haven't heard over the last 4 years from SC4Ed. It is salary. It is working conditions. It is teacher contracts. It is having to take a BS Read to Succeed course as a high school teacher. It's all of that. It is elementary school teachers not having time to use the restroom. And then it's expecting speech language pathologists to cover for them in that sense. It's not just the state. The state starts it with bad policy. And what I think is the most infuriating right now is there's some really great bills that were introduced this year by people who truly care about teaching in South Carolina, and they are sitting in subcommittee. And yet instead we have focused on moving public school money to private schools. We have focused on censorship and forcing teachers to have to teach lies and untruths and not be able to really teach students what they need to learn for the 21st century. And of course, bashing the LGBTQ plus community. So our state motto is, while I breathe, I hope. I have lost all hope. Thank you.
My name is Steve Newsom. This is my 16th year as a South Carolina English teacher. It's probably going to be the last. I actually did leave last year, and I teach in the same district as Patrick and Lisa. It's a great district, and I agree that this is sort of like the last stop for a lot of people, because if you can't make it work here, I don't know where to make it work. I do want to mention, because we've touched on salary, that we know why teachers are leaving to go to other states. North Carolina's current projected average salary is $56,812. Georgia's is $63,236, and South Carolina's is $55,898. And that's a projected average, and every year on record, we've actually had a lower average salary than the projected average. But I think the bigger reason, just to echo what Lisa said, is that teachers want respect and autonomy. And the priority for the last two sessions has not only not been to raise salary and not to add to teacher autonomy, but to go in the opposite direction. Just to give an example of the House Education Public Works Committee, y'all passed 3728, which is a censorship bill, while you sat on 3294, which limits other duties as assigned, 3459, which would reform teacher contracts, 3311, which would make it easier to renew contracts, and another bill that would make it easier to renew contracts. It's not just the practical impact of those things, but the symbolic impact of it. It's saying to teachers that the state doesn't want you to stay in the profession, that we'll put together an educator recruitment and retention task force to make it seem like we are. But again, the priority is going to be to move money to public, unaccountable organizations, to censor teachers, to villainize teachers. I came, and I know that several of you were there too, to the hearings last year on the that year's model of the censorship bill. And you heard from teachers after teacher after teacher and parents and students telling you this was going to drive people out of the profession, and the data backs it up. We had the biggest teacher loss in the state history, according to Sarah. It's just not rocket science if you don't treat people better, and they can easily go and get another job. I was offered a better paying job during this year, and the only reason I didn't take it was because I was trying to help Lisa with her campaign. At the University of South Carolina doing copywriting. They would have paid me $5,000 more a year to do that, and I wouldn't have had any of the hassle that I have now. And I'm with everyone who's spoken. I love teaching, but there really isn't an argument for doing it. And I keep hearing, I've heard from legislators saying that we need to promote the profession, but I can't really in good conscience look at a lot of people right now and say, you should go into teaching. So I think that's y'all's job. Thank you.
Thank you both for speaking up. I can tell you that when we have a new speaker this year, and when he sat down and was talking about my committee assignment, he told me education is a priority. We have to create a workforce. We have to make sure that every child has an opportunity to be a part of that workforce. The governor's the governor's Teacher Retention Recruitment Task Force, which we're sitting on right now, the recommendations are not going to be taken lightly. We will work on them. There are a lot of bills in committee and subcommittees right now that can't get out, and that goes across every standing committee.
Right. I think it's also important that there are bills that can get out of committee, and those are the ones that tell us what you prioritize.
I agree, and I believe in the second half of this legislative session, those bills will start moving out. We got through budget. Now we'll start seeing some of those bills move. Things are not going to be perfect. They're never going to be perfect in the world, but we are working on it, and it is an objective not a cynical one, but an honest one to improve the teaching profession. And the men and women sitting up here and the men and women, most of the men and women serving in the legislature see it that way. And we really are going to work to make it better. I would just say before you leave, before anybody leaves the profession, see what we do. See what happens in the next legislative year, because these recommendations probably won't be ready to go this year because our crossover date, the date that something needs to happen before we can finish it by May, comes up in April. And I don't think we'll have our recommendations ready until May. But I can guarantee you there will be at least, well, I don't want to guarantee because you can't guarantee anything in this world, but I will nearly guarantee there will be at least a dozen pieces of legislation filed based on these listening sessions and based on the conversations that we all have together. I appreciate your position. I just respectfully have to disagree that we're doomed. There is hope. And while I do breathe, I do hope, and I hope everybody in this room does. Thank you.
That was Lisa, not me. I didn't say we were doomed.
Well,
But what I was attempting to do was to hold, respectfully, to hold
That's
you
fine.
accountable for the actions that you've actually taken versus the actions that you say you may take in the future. The actions that you've taken are the ones that are driving people out of the profession. And we can promise people things that's what I've heard all 16 years of my career, promises that we were going to make it better in the future. When the recession's over, we're going to make it better. Oh, wait, the recession's over, we didn't make it better. Well, in the next session, we'll make it better. Well, we'll pass this giant omnibus bill, and that will fix everything. Oh, we didn't pass that. We'll reform Read to Succeed, and that will make it better. We'll raise salaries, or we'll say we'll raise salaries. That'll make it better. And we never actually do it. So I hear what you're saying. I appreciate it. I take you at your word. But if there aren't actions to go along with those words, then we're going to just keep seeing people leave the profession. And we can't convince them to stay by just telling them that it's going to get better in the future. Because that's, if that were the case, we wouldn't all be here right now. We would just tell our student teachers coming in or people who are considering coming into the profession, it'll be better in the future, just trust us. They don't trust us.
Heard and partially agreed. I will say that when I came in 2018, a starting teacher was barely making $30,000. Hopefully the Senate will pass this budget and we will see them making over $40,000. We had raised it to $36,000. The goal is to be at $50,000 by 2025.
Right.
And every teacher is getting a raise, assuming the Senate does their job and passes the budget we sent them. So we are working there.
Well, respectfully, if the budget that's been proposed passes, every teacher won't get a raise. There will be an increase to the state minimum salary schedule. That's not a raise for every teacher. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's nice to say that we're increasing the minimum salary schedule. That's good. But when in reality, I can go across the board to Georgia, or across the board to North Carolina, and I can make $1,000 or $5,000 more per year, and the cost of living is roughly the same, the theoretical increase to the state minimum teacher salary doesn't really do a whole lot for me.
Understood.
Thank you.
We should move on.
Our next two speakers are Inga Carey and Kimberly Long.
Hi, my name is Inga. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Good. Inga Carey, and I'm currently an elementary music teacher up in Rock Hill. And this is my 13th year teaching. I love my job. I really do. I love my students. I'm so glad my administrators and my district support me. I've never felt so supported until my last 2 years as a teacher, because when the pandemic hit, I was almost ready to quit. I had to work a second job on top of everything at school. My dad's health was failing. Turns out in 2020 and 2021, both my mother and my father passed away. Not from COVID, but from other situations. So it's been a lot in the past few years. So knowing that background, you understand how fragile some people's, behind the smile, some people, how fragile they really are. And I know a lot of people have trauma from COVID and from other things going on in their lives. So on top of all that, we have to deal with this. We have to drive hour and 15 minutes down to Columbia on a Monday night to say what we need to say because we're afraid no one else will say it. My district and administration do what they can to reduce the paperwork and reduce unnecessary meetings, and I'm so thankful for that on top of their support. We're lucky compared to other districts where I hear horror stories all the time. I advocate for education professionals and school staff as a member of SC for Ed and the SCEA. What we really need for this task force to do is to put pressure on the legislators to focus on this teacher shortage and to stop making things worse. SC Department of Ed agrees that it's a real issue, hence the task force. But we need real action to come from it. And I heard what you just said to Lisa and Steve, and like we need to see action. We tell kids, you know, you can say you're sorry for that behavior all the time, but until you actually change it, it's not meaning anything. And the words become less and less valid each time when you're not changing the behavior. We have been telling legislators to listen to our ideas, but very little of it has come to the floor for bills. They need to have experts, which are teachers and administration, or former teachers and administration, on those education committees, hence why I'm not sure why we don't have teachers in those committees that are passionate about what we need. We need to expedite the bills that will help education, not further tear it down. Yes, salary matters, but the respect would help many of us stay, especially in my thing. One more thing, I don't want to leave, but I am opening up my own small business this fall. So I will be looking closely about what we do for the task force, and I hope I can say I make it to year 14. Thank you. Yes. If it's about the small business, I'm happy to tell you.
Okay, so respect means something different to all of us sitting in the room surrounding education.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what does that respect piece look like? Does it look like the legislature? Does that look like public opinion? Does that look like administration? Because all of those are different avenues to explore. So in your opinion, what's the most important piece?
I would say D, all the above, but most recently, it's been through legislation. In my opinion, the bills that they're trying to pass, including the censorship law, are ones that aren't really even issues here compared to the issue of the teacher shortage. Like, that's humongous, whereas maybe there's only a few instances of the issues where teachers are talking about things that shouldn't be talked about. And because that is so hyper-focused in the media and throughout other social media groups, now parents are going and trying to find things. If they don't like a certain teacher, they're trying to find things in their classrooms. Exhibit A, I was already investigated this year for something. So they're trying to do a gotcha when there's nothing to get. So it's just wasting our time, wasting administrator time, wasting district office time. And with the censorship bill, that's just going to make it so much worse if that passes, because there's going to be so much other bureaucracy. My district was able to handle it. I was in the right. So we were able to handle it in-house, but I'm worried about how much more resources and time that's going to take away from education, that's going to take away from kids actually learning what they need to learn. Any other questions?
Go ahead.
No? Oh, yay.
Thank you. So you mentioned it's time for real action. You mentioned some bills that are in the queue. I don't need specific bill numbers, although I love that Mr. Newsom
I
had.
don't have them.
That's okay.
That's it.
What policy, like, give me, if you had your magic wand, your top three, what are the three real actions you would want to see in the next 12 months as you're weighing your career position with a private
Oh my
business opening and all that.
goodness, don't give me that power.
I
Okay,
wish I could, but I don't, hypothetical magic wand. I haven't found the real one yet.
Oh, man. All right, so first thing, salary. We need to make what we are, we're the experts, because we are the experts. We're the ones who went through the programs, we went to college, we did our masters, and compared to other professionals with our same level of degrees, we're swimming on the bottom of the ocean. We need that salary so that we don't have to work the second or third jobs or start your own business so that you don't have to go back to one of those. So salary, yes. Censorship and trusting teachers is my second one. And third would be to stop pulling funds away from public schools. We see that public schools aren't, like, you may think that they're failing, but we haven't even had a chance to fully fund them. And I know the words fully funded aren't, but we need to. We need to give them a chance. Just give us a chance, maybe for 5 years, fully fund everything, and see where we get. I bet you we'll land in the top 5 if we actually do what we say we're gonna do. Yeah, thanks.
Just another magic wand.
Ooh.
If you, and
I like
any
this.
of the past 3, if y'all want to answer it too, you can, but if we did away with a lot of the state required testing and you could just teach the classroom like you wanted to, do you think you'd have more respect from the teachers and students?
So much so. And learning would be more authentic too. I'm lucky as a music teacher that I don't do state testing, but I see the grueling hours that the kids have to go through. And we do so many pre-tests and tests before the test that by the time you get to the test, the kids are just worn out. They're like, why do we have to do this again? Oops, sorry. And then they're not going to do their best, especially when we have to put them in such a stringent environment. So, I mean, in my opinion, do away with all testing. Leave it up to the teachers, leave it up to the districts, because they are the experts. But I know that's an unpopular opinion, so let's meet in the middle somewhere.
And to our friend from Greenville, I have pushed in the School Board Association and everyone to try to get equal pay across the state, because I'm from Abbeville. It's a small district too, and it's hard to keep teachers there because there's nothing to do unless you want to work with cows and pigs and chickens and hunt. I mean, and whatever, but if we could get equal pay across the state for every teacher, regardless of what district they're in, I think it would work out. That would be a good way to keep those teachers in those districts like that.
I would say, even if you go work for the DMV,
Yeah,
make the same in Greenville County as you would.
yeah. Thank all of y'all.
Thank you so much.
Our next 2 speakers are Kimberly Long and Lacey Lane, and the sign-in sheet is open at the back. We do have a few more signed up, but now's your time to sign up if you want to sign up.
Start now? No, I just want to drive right at 3 minutes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, you got it, you got it.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Long, and I'm a special education teacher in Fort Mill School District. And I'm going to jump right into it, okay? As you navigate this world of vouchers in a time when public education is hurting, please don't forget our students with disabilities. Temple Grandin, a famous animal scientist who has spoken and written extensively about her experiences as a person with autism, said, "The world needs all kinds of minds. These minds need to be nourished early on with caring, competent teachers and class sizes appropriate to explicitly teach them the skills they need to flourish. This includes direct and systematic instruction of academic and functional skills. However, this type of instruction requires highly trained teachers and small class sizes. Medical and educational research tells us that 90% of brain development is complete by age 5. So we know this quality instruction needs to occur early. We should be investing money, time, and care into early childhood education for students with disabilities. Class size absolutely must be kept small for teachers to truly meet the needs of each learner. In the past year, we've also heard a lot about how parents wish to be more involved in education. I have always welcomed parent involvement in the form of parents working alongside me to help my students reach their goals. Smaller class sizes will help us build authentic, collaborative relationships with families. Regarding the impact of vouchers on students needing special education, given the way the legislation is currently written, private schools accepting public funds are not required to accept students with disabilities. Educating students with disabilities is why wholly worthwhile and critical to a civilized society. It's expensive. Please don't forget us as these shiny new, well-funded schools blossom with their extra funds and ability to pick from the best and brightest. We will still be here doing the work that we know needs to be done to serve all kids. Please don't abandon us. This relates to your purpose of recruiting and retaining teachers because personally, I've always said I can stay in this difficult job as long as I can continue to do it well. Please give us the tools, the funding, and support to teach these students well. To discuss my next point, I want to share a quote from an accomplished model who happens to have Down syndrome, Grace Strobel, on the eve of World Down Syndrome Day. We all want the same things, to be valued, respected, and to feel good about ourselves, end quote. While I'm sure being a leader serving the public must be frustrating at times, I can relate to serving the public on a microcosm level. I too feel frustrated at times, but your words and attitudes matter. I want to keep my comments positive and productive, so rather than listing out the times that our leaders' words, attitudes, and actions have made my colleagues and me feel disheartened, dejected, and demoralized, I just want you to please consider that your words, tone, and actions help shape our attitudes about our worth in society. Then teachers leave, which created the current shortage, which hurts children. Fund us properly, listen to our ideas and concerns, and treat us as professionals and equals, and we will deliver, and all our children can soar.
That was fantastic. So special education, one of the largest shortage areas in the state. And I heard you loud and clear, just like every special ed teacher I know, I can do my job well if you give me what I need and get the other stuff out of the way. Can you give me, beyond funding, can you give me some concrete, what it would look like for Ms. Long to have what she needs to do her job well? And I also heard smaller class size, so you can.
I know, and that's kind of the crux. It's not, because I'll say, I'm in Fort Mill School District, and I know I'm not trying to shoot myself in the foot, but I'm honest. And it's a great school district. We are well-funded. I'm not going to get up here and say that I don't have curriculum and tools, and I know that's the case for other places in the state, and that is disgraceful. But for us, because we're in a growing district, I just want to speak to my own experience. The class sizes have gotten larger and larger because of the influx of people moving in, and I'm not really well-versed, so I don't want to get into it too much, but I know there's like a hold harmless agreement that's holding up some of the funding, and there's been some challenges with funding meeting the level of growth. So even though we are an overall pretty privileged district, I would never want to pull from any district that has higher needs than us. However, we still serve little people, and they have a lot of needs. And we have a lot of people even moving across the border from Charlotte because our schools are so strong. And it's just critical that we have enough people. And our paraprofessionals, I can say that. I would love to see a pay increase for our paraprofessionals. They are the heart and soul of what we do in the classroom. They are absolutely critical to the team. And what they are paid is just heartbreaking. I've tried to do things at the school level and district level to at least build morale and rapport and make them feel a little bit more seen. But you guys at the state level could also, even with their salaries, consider some things that would improve, because the class size really is everything, because it's all about people and relationships. And if your caseload is too large and the children's needs are too great, then you got all the pots on the stove and everything's burning. And that's how it feels, I think, for a lot of special ed teachers, and probably teachers in general, I must say. But that's a lot of why people are leaving, because it's depressing to not be able to give everybody what they need. And we have the skill set to do it. We're highly trained. We can do it. We're like little cars you could wind up and let us go, You got a lot of talent in this state.
As the highly trained professional, give me the magic class size or caseload for a special ed teacher.
The magic would be one adult for every 2 children, and that can be paraprofessional too. I would say at the max would be 1 for every 3. because we are working on academic and functional needs across the day. So we literally teach them how to do everything. We practice how to line up, we video model, how to get out your pencil. I mean, I'm kindergarten and first grade, if you can tell by the theatrics. But, you know, there's just such needs. And then we've got kids with challenging behaviors. And like I said, you know, we have the skill set to manage that and modify and teach the replacement behaviors they need, but not always the manpower to do it. Yeah.
I'm a former special educator. I'm a special educator. I don't know if you can't ever be a former special educator. So really resonates with me what you're saying. 2 questions. One, if you don't mind me asking, what's your current caseload?
Okay, so I'm I have 6, but listen, it's just because of the kids like zoned in. I've got a colleague who has 11. I have 13. That's not unheard of. Fort Mill tries to keep us at 12, but you know, you get a transfer student from Idaho or triplets from France and they move in and that it is what it is. So I shouldn't be, but there's been other years where I've had.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just doing information gathering. We heard at
Okay.
previous listening sessions, alarming rates of caseload.
Yeah.
So just curious what yours was. Secondly, do you feel like you have the administrative support, both at the building level, at the district level, to handle all the paperwork and all the associated work that comes with special education?
I think they're trying. I definitely don't want to get up here and say that my district isn't trying. I feel like I do have good support at the administrative level in my building. I don't know if I can speak for everybody because I've got a friend here who might be speaking from Chester County and she's had a year. But at the district level, I really think they're putting a lot of effort into us. So I have to give credit where credit is due. And I do feel like we do now. The IEP paperwork is a lot. And it's somewhat you're at the mercy, like I said, of the triplets from France moving in. There's 3 more kids, and then you've got more IEPs. So it's really kind of luck of the draw.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Hey, thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Lacey Lane. I'm a school counselor with 14 years experience and a mother of 2 children in public education. While the list of vacancies for educators is long for our state, there is no shortage of highly qualified people who are called to teach and inspire our next generation. Unfortunately, there has been a decades-long effort by certain politicians to undermine public education by consistently underfunding it, offering educators low wages, diminishing respect for educators at every turn, and denying educators autonomy to make decisions in their own classrooms. I'm going to use my time today to share some observations of the issues impacting the desire for educators to remain in this most rewarding, yet increasingly frustrating and challenging field. First, since 2010, South Carolina has not fully funded public education, and yet unfunded mandates continue to roll out. Our legislators are debating voucher bills to give public school money to private schools. Not only does this take funding away from public education, but it will allow for discrimination against students with disabilities and ultimately lead to segregation of students in our state. Private schools accepting public school money will not be held to the same accountability standards as public schools, and they can cherry-pick their students based on their specific admission requirements, rather than serve all students like public schools are required to do. Our state can and should do better to support public education funding. Next, pay is a critical factor in decision-making about whether to join or stay in any profession. And the fact is, educators can make more money in less stressful jobs outside of education, which is one of the many reasons they choose to leave the profession. Any proposed raises should be state-funded and go to educators at all steps in all districts, as well as to our valuable non-certified educational staff who also deserve living wages. It's also important to consider that while competitive starting salaries are the key to recruitment, competitive mid and late earnings are the key to retention. Next, currently educators frequently walk on eggshells throughout the day. They make so many decisions throughout the school day based on their expertise and best intentions. Unfortunately, educator decisions are challenged at times by parents in disrespectful ways. Sometimes the parents don't reach out to the educator directly, rather they go over their heads or turn to social media or blast their concerns during the public comment section at the next school board meeting. Recently, parents and community members are told specifically what to complain about based on action items from local parental rights groups. The amount of misinformation that is spread by these extremist groups is rising. You never know who or what their next target will be, but the trend is they're often against science, factual information, and marginalized communities. I understand that we can't legislate respect, but the lack of respect that is shown by legislators by the bills they propose and the way they speak to and about educators emboldens behaviors like this from community members. Lastly, I want to highlight the attacks of censorship in the classroom. There are small but loud groups of people who find certain subjects personally uncomfortable, such as diversity and inclusion, LGBTQ+ students and families, and factual history. From their place of discomfort, House Bill 3728 was created. This dangerous bill seeks to prevent public school educators from teaching the full truth about past and present race and gender inequalities in their classrooms, subjects them to undue surveillance of instruction, and creates unnecessary complaint processes and the ability to sue teachers for unjustified reasons. So my hope is that you guys will really listen to educators. I know that you are. My hope is that what you hand over to the people making the decisions during the legislative session, this and next session, actually use that information, because this has been told time and again for years now. I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if I didn't understand the assignment. I think I could have taken a school counselor approach to this, but I really took an approach of just my observations of how things have changed over the past 14 years. So I can also answer social emotional questions as well.
When we get a counselor, I'm going to ask counselor questions, because obviously that's part and parcel of this. We're short counselors as well. I mean, we're short everything. Our state average ratio of counselor to student is 100 to 1 over what the national recommended average is. Part of it's we can't find enough people. Part of it's we can't retain enough.
Sure.
The counselor lens. I mean, obviously class size is a different animal. So tell me, I'm going to go magic wand question again. Inga, there's more than one magic wand to go around. What are your top 2 or 3 things that the state needs to do specifically to target recruiting and retaining counselors?
I think getting our ratios closer to that 1 to 250 recommended ratio by the American School Counselor Association is the best starting place. I know statewide, it's like you said, it's a lot closer, probably like 340 per counselor, and that's going to be more at the secondary levels. When you get to elementary level, that ratio climbs a lot higher. And I know you know, but kids face a lot of problems that we just didn't face when we were kids. So helping them cope with the anxiety that's trickling down from their parents to them, the early instance that we're seeing mental health issues, and that early identification is key. So a lower ratio all over the place, but that elementary level can't be ignored. So I would say ratio is definitely one. I'm very blessed to work in Fort Mill School District as well, alongside Kimberly, and we are very lucky to have additional mental health support within our schools. I don't know that all schools across the state are as lucky, but we have school district funded mental health counselors that are able to serve, because school counselors are here to support all students and serve adjustment issues and short-term counseling, solution-focused items. We can't do therapy. So there are the people that can help them for our kids that come to us with trauma, that can come to us with issues that are beyond the scope of school counselors. So that additional layer, I feel, could be really helpful across the state, especially in more rural school districts that maybe they don't have the community access to mental health. And we're, obviously we're lucky in being close to Charlotte, we have access to that too. And then honestly, I think it's the respect and understanding of the role of the school counselor. I know our SLPs are also specialized people within the building. We are on that same teacher pay scale as well. So we, we're fighting alongside for that salary increase because it's the same for us. So that obviously would be helpful. Just ensuring that people understand what it is that we do, so we're not utilized as supervising for lunch duty, and fair share duty is amazing, but when it becomes unfair for the people that don't have homerooms, it can be a little cumbersome, and that can drive people out. Again, super fortunate to be where I am, but I know it's not like that at schools across the state. They're often used as related arts teachers, and there's not enough related arts, PE, music, art. they'll pop in the school counselor. And then once they're teaching school, they're teaching guidance lessons all day, which is great. Social emotional learning is really key to so many things in helping our kids be successful. But you can't run a school counseling program and also serve as a part-time related arts teacher or full-time in some schools. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
One more question.
Sure.
I want to take advantage of your perspective. 14 years, you've seen a lot in terms of changes in our student body. We've heard a lot from folks about concerns they have with behavior, with mental health, as we think about our student body. So as a school psychologist, I'm not asking you to speak for all school psychologists, but what concerns you most about what you're seeing right now in the schools with respect to our students?
Sure, that's a really great question. And just to clarify, school counselors. So a little bit of a different role. School psychologists do more of the testing and our of learning evaluations. So as a counselor over the past 14 years, I would say we've seen an increase in anxiety. We've seen an increase in mental health issues and behavioral concerns displaying a lot earlier. I think, and I always try to, what's the magic answer, well, kind of what happened. But over the years, one of the big changes has been technology. I think our kids do have a lot of access to technology at younger ages that maybe they just didn't have when I first started. I think that's part of it. I think, parents are very busy and life is very stressful, and life and politics and day-to-day living is just different than 14 years ago. It's very divisive, it's very stressful, and I think that trickles down. The kids are feeling it, the kids see it. So I want to say it has to do a little bit with the technology piece. It has to do with, the parents, and are they able to, appropriately attend to their children because their phone and their devices are in their hands at all time. And that parenting pendulum also swings, different ways too. Are we, being too overbearing? Are we being, too permissive? And there's that happy medium. And so sometimes I think we see behavioral struggles when maybe there aren't a lot of boundaries set at home, and then kids come to school and they do have to adhere to expectations and boundaries. And a lot of kids struggle with that, especially coming back after COVID. We have kids that don't know how to be a student. So that those first couple of years was reteaching a lot of those skills that just they didn't have in those formative years. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, first of all. I have appreciated listening to what you and those before you have said. And things have changed, but, it's not so much the education system that has changed, but it seems to be people who have changed. And do you agree that instead of supporting our children as we send them to school to learn and making sure that we're raising our children, that we are sending children to school to be raised by teachers and counselors without the support that they need to do. That seems to be the whole thing. We are caught up in the whole political rhetoric and everything that is going on, and it seems to be really suppressing what you're there for, and that is to teach and for children to learn. How much support in all that we've talked about today that are issues do you get from administrators, from a principal who maybe needs to help you with not just academics and what you have a profession to do, but taking care of unruly, calling parents, getting parents involved. How does administration handle a lot of the things? And I know that varies from district to district, but how much do you think they understand their role and really put forth what they need to support a teacher and a counselor and those people in the school who directly touch the student?
Sure. I appreciate your question. I would say, just kind of reflecting back, you had shared about, kids are going to school to learn, and I would absolutely agree with that. I think a lot of what I've been doing as a school counselor hasn't changed. I've been promoting social emotional learning with all of my students, supporting their academic success, their social emotional, and also their career awareness, starting at that elementary level. What I've been teaching hasn't changed. The perception of what I teach has changed. Hence my shirt that says education is not indoctrination. And I would say, again, I am very fortunate to work in what I say is the best school in the state, in Fort Mill School District. And our administrators and my experiences in that district have been positive. We have administration that does support. We have positive behavioral systems in place. We have ticket systems in place. We're a CI3T school district. We've been rolling out our Tier 1 SEL, which has been really helpful. I think it's hard to expect kids to come in and do what they need to do without learning what that looks like. We have to be really explicit with that teaching because, like you said, maybe it's not happening elsewhere. And it's not that we're expected to do it all, although sometimes it feels like that. If we can lay that groundwork early, then they're able to attend to their instruction. They're able to focus. If we can remove those barriers from learning from our kids who do struggle with, big feelings and conflict resolution, if we can support them with that early, then as they grow and learn, they won't have these issues that are going to impede learning. Now, do all school districts have the support that we have? Probably not. I have heard that's a struggle, to have administrators that handle discipline and handle parents that can be somewhat aggressive or disrespectful. That hasn't been my experience, but I think, again, making sure that training is in place for everyone to understand their role within that. I know some school counselors are utilized as additional APs, and they're in charge of testing for the schools. They're in charge of 504s. They're in charge of the MTSS process, which leaves little time to do what they're uniquely qualified to do, which is deliver that social emotional learning curriculum, small group counseling, individual counseling, and crisis response.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker's up, Mr. Kalu and Angie Slayton.
Oh, man. Good afternoon. My name is Kalu Jr. I'm the Director of Certified Employment Services for Richland One. And while I was sitting here, I was planning on just listening, but I didn't hear enough of the things that I hear every day. And so even though somebody might say I'm the big bad wolf because I hire and maintain the teachers, I want to make sure that I advocate for them today. The certification process needs to be simpler. For instance, new legislation was passed saying that teachers could get micro-credentialing to become certified, but almost a year later, it's not clear what micro-credentialing they can take. Examinations should be reviewed. A PE teacher shouldn't have a harder test than a math teacher. And I don't mean to bemoan PE, but you know what I'm not saying. We have more teachers failing the physical education exam than we have math teachers. That doesn't seem to be clear or make sense. Compensation and benefits. I've worked in many districts in the state, including districts in the Low Country that are considered some of the smallest and poorest districts in the state. I have never worked for a district that pays the state minimum. So if you raise the state minimum, it will not affect the pay in those areas. The testing, again, we also need to make sure that we're providing instruction in college for whatever testing we're requiring our teachers to take. If they are leaving the college program and not able to pass the test, then either there's something wrong with the test or something wrong we're expecting them to learn before they leave. We have less graduates than the jobs vacant and our teachers that are retiring. In 2019-2020, there were 1,710 certified graduates that left our college programs in South Carolina. After school started, there were 1,474 vacancies. We are not producing enough teachers. If we fix some of the small things that I discussed, we would be able to fill those vacancies.
Certification, exams, compensation, testing.
I have a question. I don't know that you're the person to answer it. And maybe Patrick or Lila or somebody can fill me in, but do we have any examples of schools that are using the micro-credentialing right now and how that's, if it's working anywhere?
Sure. It's a big question, but I can give a small answer.
Good.
I think, and I'll ask Dr. Kalu for clarification, I think what you're talking about is the provision that folks on the initial provisional certificate, if they don't pass, if they're within one standard error on praxis subject matter exams, that they would be able to take micro-credentials. And so right now the department is in the process of trying to figure out, and I'm one of the folks that's doing it, so I'll put this on me, how do we do that fairly and equitably, and which micro-credentials would that be? We've got our first group of folks with the provisional initial. They have to be in that process for 3 years until that micro-credential option kind of opens up. So it's something that now I'll put on my opinion, and I'm a State Department hat. Matthew's here. He can get me if I'm saying something out of school. We need to work with it, but it's something we also need to do in a fair way. Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about micro-credentials for renewal
That is exactly
credit?
what I'm talking about. And just to speak on it, we've had teachers in, what word do I want to use? Inside of the limbo of alternative certification, where they would have already worked 3 years on some type of provisional, or, I'm not using the right term, other type of certificate. So if we knew the micro-credentialing, they can in fact be certified now, instead of waiting until it comes out. And there's a lot of things that you're doing, like the residency pilot at USC, the micro-credentialing that we've spoken about, and also alternative certification. But we're not doing it fast enough to fill the vacancies. For instance, if I wanted to go and PACE for special education, I could only get special education in ED. But as you know, that's not the job that we're hiring at schools. We're hiring multi-cat. So emotional disabled doesn't help us to fill the special education vacancies that we have. That's something we've known for years, but it's not changed because the rules don't allow us to change it.
Any other questions?
Can I say one more thing? Yeah. The micro-credentialing also, the residency pilot also, you're only doing 20 teachers. And that's a residency where they would come work at the school for a year while they work on their certification. Well, if we only do 20 teachers, but we need 1,700 teachers, that's not enough. So I would ask that we do more faster. Thank you.
Good evening. So this doesn't distract people. I heard someone talking about this. Let me get this out your way. There you go. Go for it.
Hi. I did not plan on speaking today either. My name is Angie Slatton. I am a Director of Special Services in a local district. And I was just moved by so many speakers today. I come with 2 solutions for you. But before I do that, I do want to say I'm from a family of public educators. My mom was first-generation college grad. She came from the cotton mills of Fort Mill. And my daughter is a teaching fellow at College of Charleston. She's a couple years behind you. And I want an opportunity for her to have the same positive experiences I've had as a public educator in South Carolina. So all the things that other folks have talked about today as it relates to recruiting special educators, I live that every day. I don't work in HR, but I'm not kidding when I say I recruit waitresses. If they smile at me nicely at a restaurant, hey, have you considered what is your certification? What degree do you have? I recruit all the time. But there's 2 things I would think you could consider that are specific task-oriented solutions to this. And one is to look at the caseloads for special educators. For example, a 6-to-1 ratio is fantastic, and I bet there's a para in there as well. But right now, our caseloads can go as high as 33-to-1. That's too high.
Is that in self-contained?
No, that is in resource. No, I didn't mean to scare you. We don't have caseload requirements for preschool. That's a concern. If you have 10 children with disabilities that are 3 years old and you only have 1 teacher and 1 para, that's not safe. So considering caseloads to be aligned to paras, and consider whether 33 is simply too high for our resource teachers. They can't do it. They can't grow our children with a caseload at 33 and with no para. So that's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is I think the reason that I talk to principals more every single day is because of behavior. And there are children that simply need more than what we offer them in public education in South Carolina right now. We need something called therapeutic day programs, which are funded in other parts of the country through the general fund, and then there's shared responsibilities between Department of Mental Health, the Department of Ed, and the school districts. If I was to send a student right now to a private setting because they're not safe in a public school, and I've done this, it's gonna run me $100,000 easily for one kid for 1 year. That's not sustainable. So we need another option in South Carolina for students that are not safe and are not supported in public education. And I can talk all day about that, but I only have 2.5 minutes. 10 seconds. So I'll stop there hopefully I gave you 2 solutions. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have for me.
If you had a little more time to keep telling me about therapeutic day programming, what would you tell me?
If I had more time to tell you, what I would love to see is regional supports for students that are not safe in the public school setting. So kids who need a true therapeutic wraparound service day. So that would be a building a ratio somewhere around 15-1 just in the staffing for the classroom, but you also would have, along with that wraparound service, you're gonna have school psychologist, you're gonna have speech therapist, you're going to have clinical counselors, you might have access to a psychiatrist to help support medication management. You're gonna have parent support, you're gonna have counseling for those families as well. And then we're gonna have transition programs that transition the students successfully back to that gen ed setting. The goal is not to keep them there forever. The goal is to get them there, teach the skills in a very structured setting, and then transition them safely and successfully back to the gen ed setting.
Which states are doing this well?
Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Unless Beverly has different information for me, our last 4 speakers in order are Courtney Barron, Sally McCants, Katie Cruz, and Holly Garza. And the folks I'll get off the other sign-in sheet.
Okay.
I didn't plan to speak, so I just wrote something down really quickly. My name is Courtney Barron, and I'm a special education teacher as well. I'm trying to slow down because I'm a really fast speaker anyway. In my home district of Chester County, born, raised, grew up in Great Falls, and currently right now teach at Louisville Elementary. My husband's also a teacher. He's been 16 years, born and raised South Carolina, Clarendon County, but New Zion. So we kind of get, education the past 40 years in South Carolina, how it's been. Sorry. As well as my immediate family, all work in some type of education. My sister, my aunt, my niece, any of them. So what would I like to see change as far as with special ed, as well as a parent of 2 in the classroom currently? And my husband also coaches, so we kind of get all sides of everything in education. So I have a master's degree plus 30 from Carolina. He has a bachelor's from Francis Marion. However, because he coaches, he makes about $500 more than me a year. He teaches high school math. I teach special ed. I get hit, I get kicked. This time last year, I got kicked so hard in the chest, I had to go to the doctor for it. I've had students come to me with scissors, and I teach mild setting. Like, this is not a severe classroom at all I've ever been in, and I've been in multiple districts. As well as, because I really have never truly had a planning, I sit at gymnastics 9 hours a week, that's what we do. 6 to 7 of them is basically sitting there on a computer planning out my day. Because I don't get that, things change, kids are absent, homebound, behaviors, plans are changing daily for us. So I'm sitting there 3 nights a week changing our plans. And currently I have a caseload of 9 students with 1 assistant. Grades K through 4th, but we kind of keep 5th grade because our middle school starts at 5th if needed. So really just, planning would truly help out, as well as, like I said, sometimes, I'm really having to get down in the floor, CPI train, do holds, I deal with bathroom and things like that. My husband, he's probably not like this when he sees this, but he coaches, like I said, football and baseball. I love him, he does tremendously more than me at the school because he's there till 10 o'clock at night with kids coaching. But yet I'm coming home, sometimes black and blue and things like that, and he's making more than me. As well as, like I said, a mother of 2, one that struggles with reading. I truly see, being 2 in gen ed that, testing. We have a diagnosis of moderate anxiety. Yes, a lot of it's coming from some other things, but however, her reading and test scores, and right now she's scared she's going to fail 3rd grade because that's what she's been told with state testing coming up, if she doesn't pass.
So, things right now truly need to change now, not next year and the 5 years from now. It's truly a right now thing. That's it.
Courtney,
Yes.
Courtney, salary-wise, are you equal with your husband and then he gets a stipend
So he
for?
does get stipends, and that kind of, because like I said, that was my phone. It does make a difference. However, we talk about a lot of times special ed is sometimes a whole different ballgame than what
Right.
you're dealing with sometimes, just him as a math teacher. Like I said, he gets a 90-minute planning. Yeah, he has lunch duty, but I don't even get 5 seconds sometimes to go to the bathroom. Like I said, 'cause I only have one assistant, so I truly have to plan those in and out of, a lot of times my kids are like, why are you eating? We're doing math. Because if I eat today, this is the time I'm going to eat, because I don't have a lunch or anything either. So late bus, early bus, I'm with my kids all day.
Right.
Love them to death, y'all. Wouldn't do anything different, but, it's a lot.
Sure, and you're tremendously dedicated to be doing that. Mr. Rainwater, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but who sits on this committee, has done an in-depth study of our school finance across the way. And we realize that it is tremendously unequal across the state of South Carolina. And mainly because of the fact that from district to district, the ability to pay that local fund that comes in makes a difference in many areas of what a teacher, special ed or whatever, is being paid salary-wise.
And I'll say, sorry, I'm not. My pay, I was in Fort Mill, like I said, I taught at Chester High, then went to Fort Mill and came back, our kids and stuff. But my pay from Fort Mill to Chester was only about $1,200 difference. However, like I said, my husband taught at East Clarendon, West Florence. When he came up to this area, his pay difference, even taking some stipends away, was a significant amount from what
Less
he started.
or more?
More in Chester
More,
County
yeah.
than it was, in Clarendon and is it Florence 1 too? I don't know.
Right, and their local
Yeah.
ability.
Yes.
And I think we have come to realize in this state, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Rainwater, since I put you on the spot, but the way we fund education is not proving to be the best way in the state in order for the entire state to be. Am I correct? I know it. They're very sensitive. There we
Okay,
go.
there, finally, so thank you. Well, first, I think a lot of what the speaker and other speakers have talked about, and I know we worked with Ms. Slatton there a couple weeks. She's still in the room? Well, she's already gone. Trying to look at caseloads. I mean, I do think, part of it, what everybody's talked about, I think this is a data-driven decision. What statistics do we need? How many teachers do we have? What are the student-teacher ratios? We were trying to get down to a caseload data, caseload statistics on what do classroom teachers. I mean, the first speaker there, Miss Jordan, was my wife's supervisor. And I bothered her about SLPs and caseloads. And I think there's some issues on standardization. I mean, the state could help because there's a range on what districts have. What's the state's need? So there's that balance between what is the state and what is the local. I mean, I am curious. We're in the first year of the new state funding formula. We are funding, or the formula fund is like 67,000 teachers are funded in the formula. We got 11, funding one teacher for every 11.2 students, but you don't have that many bodies working. So there's monies available out there. And that's part of what our responsibility is, Ms. Allison, to get to your question, is creating a funding dashboard so members of the General Assembly understand where the money is. We're the first year into that. We haven't completed the school year, so we're waiting to get that data. But I do think having the data to understand this, I'm an economist by trade, so it's supply and demand. If you have to pay one group of teachers more or something like that, that just kind of fits my my background there. It's supply and demand. What do you need? But I think there's got to be a clear data-driven decision, understanding where the gaps are. Patrick's identified some things here and tried to get some questions, but where are the needs on there? But no, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think there's trying to get people to understand and look off the same data. What's the information? What's it proving? And we're in a transition stage, I think, with this new formula to help provide a little bit more clarity on what the state's funding and then where that money's going and how's it being used. But yeah, I think the caseloads are pretty interesting. What does the state need? What does the state expect? And I understand another thing, the regional differences there, the gaps between that. Now, that's a good question. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be speaking. But so what is that balance between the state responsibility and local ability to pay more? I mean, I think there's a political decision that has to be made there. So that's a long way to say all the easy answers have been taken over the past 20 or 30 years, and there's some tough choices that have to be made going forward. But it needs to be based upon the data that's available so the policymakers can understand, kind of have a level playing field out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you? Doing well. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you. My name's Sally McCants. I want to thank you for your time and your service on this task force. I am a 5th grade teacher at Rosewood Elementary, right here in the shadows of the State House in Richland 1. I did not know that our certified Mr. Kalu was going to be here. I served as our district teacher of the year last year and learned so many things. I remember in my state application, I talked about the power of relationships within our community, and I kind of used that as my drive all last year for my platform, and I realized that I saw things from a different perspective regarding relationships and the idea of teacher recruitment. I have served as a mentor, and what that looks like in Richland 1 is when there's a new hire, when there's a new teacher, I'm that shadow teacher. But what I've done on a personal level is I've stayed in touch with my teacher cadet teachers from high school. And as they have gone to College of Charleston and to Winthrop, I have stayed in touch with them. I am reading their practicum lesson plans. I'm calling them once a week just because I want to. And I think it's become so important. And these girls and gentlemen have come home to be teachers in South Carolina. They have not changed their degree, and they are still excited about being teachers and sometimes coming back to their own school districts and being homegrown teachers, which I think is absolutely amazing. Another thing that I have been witness to is, and I know Katie is speaking behind me, we just happen to run into each other here. Because of my relationships through Teacher of the Year, I have been honored to work with Teach SC. And Teach SC is a partnership with the South Carolina Department of Ed, and they are amazing. And I just got off a call with 30 Aiken teachers. And they're not even teachers yet. They are assistants in classrooms. And because of the programs I was able to talk about that we offer in South Carolina, we have built relationships with 30 more people that want to become educators now. They want to change from being instructional assistants to being teachers in the classroom. And with Teach SC, I am able to talk to anybody who wants to, no matter where they are in their career path, be teachers. Retired military, associate's degree, college students, maybe just a high school diploma. But wherever they are, I have the ability to make those relationships and keep those relationships happening with all those individuals, and that is so powerful. So thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So recruitment is,
yes,
that's what I'm about right now. What are we not doing in high schools to recruit those students who are showing an interest or showing aptitude for it?
Well, I can tell you directly from Dreher High School, their teacher cadet program is massive. There's about 30 kids in there. It is dual enrollment, which means they are receiving AP credit and high school credit at the same time. Am I right, Mr. Kelly? Okay. And they are using it just to get AP credit. I think if we could streamline that or break it apart to where you do have the dual enrollment and you're offering a teacher prep program, I think that would be perfect. And you can teach that with same standards, but I think the end goal would be different.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say this out loud so I don't forget it, to build on what she's saying. Not only is teacher cadet eligible for dual enrollment credit, which we need to make sure they're all taking advantage of, on the state report card, high schools can get points, credit, whatever it is, for students being college and career ready, and there's 9 different indicators. One of those can be achieved through dual enrollment completion, but teacher cadet is not in that set of courses. We need the Education Oversight Committee to fold teacher cadet into that set of courses so that a kid who goes through teacher cadet gets the college credit, but they also check the box for the school to be college and career ready as an individual, because otherwise that kid will be getting directives and encouragement to go elsewhere with their schedule so they can check the box for state report card data.
That'd be good.
Okay, 2 questions. Number 1, the teacher cadets that you keep in contact with when they go to, I'm assuming, a college in South Carolina, how many, I know you don't have like the exact number, but are they moving towards teaching fellows programs? Are they trying to stay in that SARA program, or are they just taking teacher cadet and that pushing them to be an education major? Does that make sense? Okay.
No, they are in teacher cadet to be educators.
Right.
Some of them do the teaching fellows, and I have helped them prep for that so they know what their project is and how they're going to present it. A lot of them are just your old-fashioned traditional students who are not going to do teaching fellows. They just want to go to a 4-year school and be a teacher. And they might be a little leery of their professors to go and have that one-on-one with and to talk, and they just need a sense of comfort and somebody they trust to say, hey, I'm having this kind of hard time, or help me with this. This is kind of what I'm thinking. And I told you the example of the lesson plan, which was just the sweetest ever.
Right, which is my second question.
Yes.
Is as you're keeping in contact with these students as they're in their college program, and I assume once they become first-year teachers, what are the things that they're telling you that they don't feel comfortable with once they get into the classroom? Like, what do they not feel prepared for?
The amount of stuff, and when I say stuff, that's their words, too many resources. We have too many, and I know I'm going to hear people behind me saying there's not enough, but for a young person to come into the classroom, there are so many resources. You've got this online program, but you've got to put your information here for your students. And then if there's a teaching platform, textbooks have their own website. There's a lot of things for them to ingest at one time. And that's very, very difficult when you're trying to just make a bulletin board and be excited about being a teacher for the first time. It's a lot to understand and to take in. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, y'all.
Well, hi, everybody. I am Katie Cruz, THSC, Katie Cruz, but today I am just Katie Cruz, the lifelong South Carolinian, the former student, and the mama of 2 kids who will be in public schools. I could talk to you about THSC a lot, but one thing I just want to say today is I'm really representing a lot of voices of teachers that I've spoken to over the number of years and things that they've raised to me that are out of my THSC lane that I do think should be raised here. Katie Cruz, the person, has always been in South Carolina. I love this state. I just love it. And God made me to be a public servant. It's just who I am. When I was in kindergarten, I got really, really sick, and I tested into special ed. And fast forward, senior high school, I'm a Carolina Scholar. I've got all these academic accolades. What happened from A to Z were teachers and resources and parents who cared. And I am so passionate about every student meeting their full potential by having a quality teacher. It's what fuels me every single day to do what I do wherever I land. And quality teachers are so important in that. And when we think about this teacher shortage, I want you guys to think, we think very focused on the teacher shortage and how many vacancies there are, but truly, ideally, there are multiple qualified candidates for districts to choose from to pick the best teacher to be my child's teacher or everyone else's child's teacher, right? That's what we really want. And as a task force, I'm sort of curious, what's your end goal? Because to me, Katie Cruz, the one that dreams, that's my end goal. I want the best for the future of my state, and everything that we become as a state comes from this place of education, comes from each student having a quality teacher. It's just so important. And I think when you're in government, there are so many needs to meet, but we really can't meet any of them without an educated workforce. It's just so important. But a few things that they have raised to me that I want to voice that I haven't heard today. School safety. I know that Alan Walters at the Department of Education, he's on the board, has a great plan, but as a parent, and I've heard teachers talk about this, and you've heard sort of an uneven space of resources from district to district, we want to see a statewide plan, maybe working with SLED, where parents really know what's going on, there's a lot of communication, and that these teachers feel safe to come and do their job and focus on their job, which is teaching students. They shouldn't be thinking about everything else. There is a huge disconnect between the general public and teachers. And I think that has to do with the distrust that we see in general between the general public and public servants in any capacity, but we certainly see it showing up in our schools today. A solution I'd like to propose, and don't ask me how we're gonna do this, but I got some ideas maybe. An ability for school districts to be able to list whatever it is that they need and be able to get that from our communities and public, where we can tie the community and the public together with the school systems to meet those needs, to where it's easy to find and easy for them to participate and be in the schools and see what's going on. All right, I'm done.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Holly Garza, a product of Richland II Public Education, an alumni of Columbia College and beneficiary of the SC Create program. I'm a first-year special education multi-cat teacher. That means that with my teacher program, I could have certified also for general education as well. All I'd have to do is take the gen ed praxis. In addition, my husband and I are parents to 2 Richland II students, and I have worked in South Carolina public education for going on 9 years. Sorry, I'm nervous.
No.
My previous years, I worked up to 3 jobs to help support my family as a teacher aide because the aide salary is that bad. For reference, I was paid around $15,000 a year when I started and did not make it quite to $18,000. Take-home pay before certifying as a teacher. I received no experience credit for those 8 years on my current certification. In my first year, I have learned that I am not only a teacher, I am a therapy provider, caseworker, student advocate, and secretary. I know this comes as no surprise to a veteran teacher, but as one former special education teacher told me, my shelf life is 5 years. And I believe the overwhelming amount of extra duties is part of that. In addition to planning and teaching highly individualized education programs for my students, I also have to organize and schedule meetings and fill out endless paperwork. Other states have separated the job of caseworker so that their special educators can focus on the vital work of specialized education delivery and data collection. My job is one of the highest risk in regards to retention and recruitment. Since my first year in education, I have watched class sizes go up from 6 to 8 to 15 to 20. The teacher that I worked with as a student teacher had a caseload of 60 as a resource teacher. She was the only resource teacher in the school. Depending on individual needs, there is no individualization at that point. I've also been in classes this year with 3 additional paras and 8 students. So there is no kind of standardization across the board. My class is currently at 13 students, and I only have 1 aide. I've requested additional aid. I've provided documentation. Those requests were denied, and I really believe it's because there is no one there to fill those positions. The information I shared about my experience as a classroom aide, I think, is pertinent to that. So just to summarize, recognizing that casework is a whole secondary full-time position in addition to being a special educator, and paying teachers and aides appropriately to help support the caseloads in those classes are really what I wanted to focus on today. So thank you so much. Sorry, I'm so nervous.
Thank you.
You did fantastic.
Yes.
Tell me how different your day would be and your working conditions would be if your school had a case manager who handled scheduling the IEP meetings, building the calendar, putting the information into whatever that portal is you have to do for the IEP. What would that do to your working conditions?
Oh my gosh, I would be able to spend more time with my family, which that was why I was working 3 jobs and going to school to do this job, was so that I could provide more, more opportunities to spend time with my family and to do things that we wanted to do. And oh my gosh, like I'd have a weekend maybe, because an IEP is like an entire federal contract that I have to fill out for every student. And all of it is based on data that I actively collect every day in that classroom. So having a caseworker just take off that part of it. Like not only that, I have to organize the meeting, so I have to make sure that like up to 10 people are available to be at that meeting on the day that before the annual comes up or before the reevaluation comes up. Like I'm the only person that can open that IEP in order to make that meeting. So. And I mean, it could be as simple too as like a special review where my student has reached a goal. So now I have to get all these 10 people together so that we can make a new goal. Like it's just so much, it's so much. It's like a whole full-time job to do that casework. It really is.
What would it mean for your ability to deliver quality instruction for your students if all of that got taken off of you and went to a case manager?
I would be able to, like I said, I'd be able to just notify them like, hey, my kid has reached this goal, let's meet, and then they could organize that meeting and I could be moving that kid forward more. Like I really have to provide them what's in the IEP. And if I keep moving them forward more, that means that I'm not taking data on what it says is in the IEP, which is not, it's not in compliance. So yes, it would mean so much for my students. I have students in my classroom now because let me tell you, I think kindergarten is a little early to be recognizing kids as special education and putting them into a specialized classroom that means that they will not have a high school degree. They could not get a certification, like any kind of high school diploma, even if they won their GED. Like I have kindergartners in there that could definitely be moved out. But it just depends on how much time is in the day and how much I can do to organize that meeting and to get how many people I can get on the same page. So it would do so much for my kids. It really would. All right, thank you.
I'll leave it to the committee. We had 3 names I didn't see, and they'll take 3 minutes each. So I think we should go for it.
They traveled here.
All right, let's do it. Up first, Sherry East, then Albert Jones, and then our final speaker is Liddy Parrish.
Hello, committee. Good evening. My name is Sherry East. I'm a high school science teacher from the Rock Hill School District area, but I'm currently serving as the president of the South Carolina Education Association. So for years, our members have been asking elected officials and decision makers to listen to educators when making decisions about education. So I want to thank you for hosting these listening sessions and traveling and staying late with us to hear from teachers about an opportunity for solutions that we can reduce our teacher shortage. Our members have left the class, so have done for a range of reasons, and when I first began my presidency, I called and started asking what's going on, and I got quite a lesson in elementary education because I teach high school, so that was my world, and I was opened up to a lot of things our elementary people told us. So I'm going to share each of you the things that I have specifically, but the most common thing above all was respect. Our teachers and educators, including support staff, do not feel respected or valued in their role. To that end, the recommendations I'm going to highlight will ensure or make us feel more respected, which is a hard thing to legislate. For one, is to increase teacher and support staff pay. Educators should not have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to pay their rent. A recent research in Charleston, for a teacher to afford a house in Charleston, they would need 22 years experience. So first-year teachers could not afford to buy a home in the Charleston market, which we know, that's probably a higher scale market. We cannot retain quality teachers when they cannot afford to pay their bills, particularly when the job itself is so demanding of their time. They also had worries about their retirement being stable and their insurance premiums or what they were getting as an insurance plan, which leads me to the second recommendation, which is my soapbox is protected time. Too many teachers cannot complete their duties during their contracted hours because they have too many assignments for additional tasks during their day. As a result, many teachers had to work into the evening, or they reported if they didn't go to school early, stayed late, or gave up their weekends, they simply could not get their job of planning, grading, and doing their schoolwork and contacting parents done. This led to a decrease in their own family time or being able to spend time with their own children and their own families. What is really troubling right now is that we got the 33 minutes of time, which many of you legislators said, Sherry, we shouldn't have to legislate, you can go to the bathroom. I was like, you're right, yes ma'am, you should not have to legislate that, yet you did. And what we're hearing right now from some districts and some meetings I've had is the districts are already doing workarounds on that. Oh, we can't possibly do that, so we're gonna add an hour to your day. I'm like, oh no, that's illegal, you're not allowed to do that either. Oh, well, we're gonna shore up some inequities between elementary and middle school time, so yeah, we're gonna be allowed to do it. Which is infuriating me at this moment to think that you guys said, give them a break, let them go to the restroom, and that may or may not happen next year. So all these workarounds. Along with time, when I started talking to teachers, is one teacher told me she was required to bake cupcakes. I was like, ma'am, you can't be required to do that. Well, yes, I am. I'll send you my email. Sorry, she did. The summer work, the worst one I think was she couldn't breastfeed her child because she wasn't given time during her day to pump her breast milk, which unheard of, but that was a true story. So I'll stop there if you have any other questions. My other one was they leave because they don't feel safe. 43% left over discipline issues because they were either verbally or physically attacked and that nothing happened. There were no consequences for the children. So I know, if you'll give me 1 second, it's very hard to legislate respect, but let me tell you how I think you could do it. You could respect me and other educators by passing policies about pay and benefits. You could respect educators by passing pay legislation about safety. You could respect our educators by passing policies about their time and to make sure that they are not disrespected by allowing them to bake cupcakes in their spare time. So I will have any questions.
Cupcakes, like that, I just want to make sure I'm hearing this right. A school leader told the teacher, you need to bake cupcakes and bring it into school as a condition of employment?
Yes, and I actually saw the email because I didn't believe it at first. I was like, can you send me that in writing? Like, I need to see that. And not only did it tell her she had to bake them so many times a year, it also listed what type of mix she was to use. And and I said, are you giving any money back for that? Like, did they reimburse you? Or then I'm trying to think, okay, why would you do this? Are you getting that money back into your classroom? Like, is this a school fundraiser? Is this part of, no, Sherry, no. And then she finally said, Sherry, I didn't call you about the cupcakes. I called you about something else. I said, whoa, but the cupcakes are a problem. Like, if you're about to walk out of your job because, you know, she didn't even think that was even an issue. Like, what do you mean they can't make me do cupcakes? I'm like, what academic value does this have for you to bake these cupcakes? So 3 to 4 times a year they were required. I got the email, I've called, made some calls. I used to carry around a box of cake mix with me as one of the reasons why teachers were leaving. So it's that kind of disrespect we're talking about, you guys. I mean, you can blame that on poor leadership, you can blame it on whatever, but it has to stop.
So, Sherry, neither you nor I are contract lawyers, but hypothetically, in your expert opinion as the president of the SEA, if a contract happened to say that a teacher could be assigned any other duty as assigned by the school leader, I guess cupcake baking could be considered other duties as assigned?
Yes, that's what we're finding. And
if that contract language was missing, it'd be a lot harder to justify cupcake baking as another duty as assigned?
It absolutely would be a blessing to all of us for you to remove that from our contract language.
I have a question. Are all contracts written alike?
Not necessarily. We did find that out too, and I'm in the process of gathering all 80 of them. But they do all have that sentence in them. They all say that any reasonable duty asked of you. They also say if the state runs out of money, you'll agree to work for less money. They also some of them don't give a starting or ending time of when your day starts or ends. So when you sign a contract on May 10th, by the way, which is before jobs are even posted, you are really signing a blanket note to a district to do with you what they will, because you're not given a school assignment, you're not given a subject assignment, you're just know that you have a job. My situation too, I love to teach biology and environmental. If you ask me to teach physics, I don't want to work at that district. It's not a good idea. But you don't let me out. So you at the last minute, the physics teacher quits and you say, okay, Sherry, sorry, but it's the first week of school and we need you to teach physics. I have no legal recourse but to go teach physics. Or you take my contract and breach it for a year. I can't even teach in another district that would need a biology teacher. So that's also a contract issue that I hope y'all take a look at. So, you know, you really are asking a lot of teachers to just sign my life away on May 10th to do whatever it is you want and need me to do, including baking cupcakes.
Well, I know when the General Assembly passed the unencumbered time law, in visiting in schools, the first school that I went into had some of the most adorable women with little aprons on during lunch, and they each had a table. And I said, are you all PTO? PTA? Well, no, ma'am. We are volunteers who come. We get paid for an hour to supervise the lunchtime for these children while the teachers can go do what they need to do. They can eat, they can meet with their peers or whatever. The next school that I went into said our unencumbered time is when we have to make all calls to our parents. We have to do all of our paperwork. So that unencumbered time, which meant by General Assembly that you would have time for yourself, ended up not uniform across the 80 districts in this state.
And it's really an elementary school issue more so than high school, because the way a high school person is scheduled, I'm going to get a 90-minute planning or 30, 60-minute planning. Does it get taken sometimes when people are out or for meetings? Or, of course it does. Do I have lunch duty? Of course I do. But I don't eat with my children every day like the elementary people do.
Right.
And I didn't realize elementary people did that.
Yes.
But they open the ketchups, the milks, they need the cheese sticks, the whatever they're eating that day. It's very important that these little ones have an adult with them to help them. But every state around us has duty-free lunch and unencumbered planning time.
Right.
So for us just to ask for one of them, we were so thrilled. And then you think about it, it took 4 years for us to pass a 30-minute duty-free time. And the saddest thing is that now I'm hearing districts are doing workarounds on it to try not to do it. I was like, what? Why would you? That's just, it's unbelievable that I'm hearing that. But I even have superintendents calling saying, I just want y'all to be aware that this may or may not happen. So here we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So like the others, I did not intend on speaking, but I've been texting a few teachers. My name is Albert Jones. I'm a former teacher. I taught 4th grade in Lexington-Richland School District 5. A little bit of my story. Throughout my time in the classroom, I had 3 jobs. I taught Monday through Friday, tutored Monday through Thursday. Friday and Saturday, I worked at the Ruby Tuesdays or the IHOP in Lexington. Served a lot of my students and families. And then on Sunday we kept that for church. So kind of thinking about wages and educator voice and really making sure that we are doing active work. When I see the term educator, I'm including everyone, your classroom teachers, your support professionals, custodians, secretary, anything of that nature. One of the things that is really tough to kind of think through and really work with is understanding that a lot of our educators are, especially our early career educators, in my role and capacity now, working for the South Carolina Education Association, I work with aspiring educators and early career educators. A lot of our early career educators are still living at home with their parents because they cannot afford to move out and kind of start that process and journey. When I was a student at the University of South Carolina, I did that. I lived at home, saved some loans on the back end. However, it really created an opportunity for me to kind of build some financial standing. A lot of people, that's not an opportunity for them. Here's just kind of some of the topics that have been coming up in conversation. One is the certification, the Praxis POT, that pathway. I personally know two people who would have been the best educators who just could not pass those tests and therefore had to change their major. And so you end up losing individuals. Or if we're talking about recruitment, it's a conversation of some of them can't even get into the profession because of a test that may be skewed in really looking at that. Not saying that there shouldn't be any sort of assessment at all, but what we're using, is it really supporting the work that we do? The next thing that I want to talk about is I was the only black male in 2015 when I graduated from the University of South Carolina. USC is a really huge school, one of our major flagship universities in South Carolina. So for me, not seeing anyone in my graduating class that looked like me, not being paired with anyone in my graduating class, as far as a mentor teacher or anything of that nature, I kind of had to be intentional and find people who look like me in classrooms to learn and understand. Because being a man in the classroom, being a black man in the classroom, you operate a little bit differently than the general population. The next piece of that is making sure that we have an environment, our working conditions are where they need to be to really allow for our black educators, our indigenous educators, our people of color who are educators to really thrive in that environment. And do we have that? Is that something that we're really taking the time to listen in on, learn about? The next piece is for folks who are going into education. A lot of them can't afford that student teaching practicum experience, the clothes, the time. All of those things are huge. And so those are just some of the pieces. I do have a list of some other things, but those are some of the main ones that I know are really some barriers. Before we even get to getting people into the classroom, we're running into issues of even having those candidates who are willing and able to even come into the classroom because of a variety of reasons.
Mr. Jones, you said that you were a teacher. Did you leave the teaching profession?
So I ended up having an opportunity to work for the South Carolina Education Association. While I am still a certified teacher and a certified administrator, now I get to work with everyone who is going into the profession of education.
Very good. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Just have a quick question. You mentioned the Praxis test, and I just wanted to follow up on that. You said you personally knew people who had a challenging time with those standardized tests.
Yes.
Is it your opinion that, or maybe for context, were those college graduates? Were those people who finished a degree of some
They
sort?
did. So I actually have a friend who's now going to his master's program at Columbia College for Higher Ed.
Yeah.
And I also have a friend who's doing a public health major at USC. So these are people who are could pass your GREs, your MATs, could get into the classroom, but something about that POT and Praxis was a barrier for them in order to enter, especially if you think about an elementary educator. And in my experience, I had to test on things that I would have never taught. The most complex thing I taught in 4th grade was long division, which was its own beast and its own thing. However, some of the calculus principles and things of that nature, I didn't necessarily need to know how to do that in order to be able to be an effective educator in the elementary level.
What kind of flexibility do you think, what do you think's a comparable entry point as opposed to a Praxis exam to demonstrate competency?
Yeah, I think that's something that's going to we have to look at what we're using to measure. And so while I'm not an expert on every certification test that are out there, I know some other states do a lot of portfolio work, things like at TPA and things of that nature. And so that's a resource that is used at times in order to supplement the traditional testing environment and things of that nature. Because in addition to it, a lot of times I find just because you're a great test taker does not mean you will be a strong educator. And so we have to be really intentional in looking at some of the assessments. A lot of it is the work that you're doing in the classroom with the students. We can talk about theory, we can talk about, studying those things, but it's the practice, it's the fact that you're with those students doing that work. I know someone talked earlier about the residency programs that exist. And so really those are the pieces that I think will be critical in order to make sure that we have a well-prepared education workforce, but also in addition to it, one that is realistic.
Thank you.
Thanks for waiting, Miss Parrish. We're excited to hear you.
Thank y'all for staying. Hi, I'm Liddy Parrish, and I am another speech pathologist. I'm the lead speech pathologist in a local school district. And I just kind of wanted to come and talk to y'all about, from a district perspective, how much time we are spending on trying to recruit speech pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, special education teachers, paraprofessionals, school psychologists. I spend so much of my time on that I spend time at home when, I'm not calling people during the day to try to recruit, answering and supporting my people that are actually treating children who need support from me. I can tell you, when I speak to students in university programs, they automatically don't want to work in schools. So therapists, we're a little bit different, we're a little unique. So speech pathologists, occupational therapists, and physical therapists, and even psychologists have options outside of the schools. So when I go visit universities and ask students if they're interested in the schools, they don't outright say it, but you can see on their faces, not so much. And so when you ask them, what have you heard about the schools? Low pay, large caseloads, many, many more, patients or students to see than you would see outside of the schools, and unmanageable workload because of the paperwork. It's so intense in the schools. We also have a lot of lack of parental support and a lot of lack of community support, and then additional duties. So those are things that these people that are in university programs getting their master's degrees or their doctoral degrees for therapies hear about the schools while they're there. And so we automatically, have people that aren't even considering going into the schools because we kind of have a bad rap. So that's unfortunate, and we're working really hard to show that there's a positive side to being in the schools. Our students are what help retain people. When we ask, why do you stay? It's our students. It's also leadership. So Dr. Rebecca McKenzie-Appling was my lead before she retired, and she was one of the reasons that I stayed. And so I know that's a large reason for a lot of our people to stay, is good leadership. I did just want to say, as a parent of a twice exceptional child, meaning I have a child who is gifted and talented and also has dyslexia, so she has a disability, I am terrified that her teachers are going to leave. She has a fantastic teacher this year, and her teacher is exhausted. She doesn't say it, but I can see it, and I don't want them to leave. I feel like we're asking teachers to be parents and social workers, and it's just not fair. It's too much. We don't want to lose them, so if y'all can help, that'd be great. I don't have great suggestions for you, just kind of giving y'all some input from a parent and an educator perspective. So thank y'all for staying.
No, but I'd like to make a statement. I think when I listen to this and know it's coming from your heart, and I'm a firm believer that no matter what this state does, 85% of our children will always be in the public education arena. And we as a society, a legislature, whatever, we need to help get it right for those of you that are hanging on, for sure.
Thank you. And because the chair lady made me sit up here in the middle and kind of conduct the meeting, I'm going to throw it over to her to give some final remarks, because she inspires me just about every time she opens her mouth.
Well, first of all, my final remarks would be thank all of you that came today, those of you that poured your hearts out to us, because I feel that if you made the effort to come and you're in the trenches, nobody knows better than you what is needed, and that's what we need to hear. I want to thank all that sat on this panel today and are working hard. We've got true believers in public education on this panel, and I know that they're going to work hard to bring a good report to their colleagues in the General Assembly come May for a positive move forward things. And Lila, we thank you, because you're always there with us every step of the way. And not only is Lila with us in person, but she goes home and puts all this together and sends to us. So Lila, thank you so much. But thank all of you for coming, and all of you who serve on this panel. And I'd like to say thank you for the block building and all the staff, our security, and our technical crew that are here with us today. So thank you so much. Is there anything else that anyone would like to say before we leave or adjourn? Yes, Lila.
This is our last listening session, so mainly for the audience and anyone listening, this QR code is live. This survey is live. We are taking responses for folks that couldn't travel to Columbia an hour and 15 minutes or all the way from Greenville on the back roads. Please send us your input and your ideas. We would love to hear them.
That is great. Thank you for reminding us of that, and certainly put that to use. Thank you, Lila, for doing that. I would like to say to the committee, especially Representative McGinnis's committee and mine, you know, your thoughts and all that you've gotten in here, we'd like for you to compile and send to Lila so that we can all get that together. Okay? Anything else? Did you have something?
Patrick? I just want to say one thing to us, but I'm fine with everybody hearing it. And I'm going to say this the next time we have a full task force meeting. So many powerful words today, but thank you, Ms. Parrish, at the end for saying, I don't want my child to lose their teacher.
I know.
Because we're in a moment in this state where I continue to hear about parents' rights, and we've got to cater to what a parent wants, and I'm good with that as an educator. But that's the voice we don't hear enough of, and that's the voice we need to hear, and we need to, as we construct our recommendations, it needs to be driven by how do we make sure that that parent who wants their child to have that exceptional teacher has that teacher next year? Because I share your fear. I'm not worried about my ninth grader because I can count the clock and I know she's going to get out before this stuff hits. But my sixth grader I'm terrified of because the exceptional teachers that my ninth grader is benefiting from right now, we're going to drive him out of the profession. That's the parent voice that we need to be listening to.
Right. And you know, we hear a lot about parental rights, which I solely agree with, but I also have to remember that it's parental rights and responsibilities, and we need to have that collaboration with educators and parents across the board. We definitely need that.
Well said, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Very good, Mr. Chairman.
Madam Chair.